At the beginning of 2025, I calculated my financial independence numbers, and it has completely transformed the way I approach both my financial and professional decision making. So, today I'm going to walk you through the mindset shifts that I've made from knowing my FIRE numbers and why it's so important. There's a lot of personal finance jargon on the internet, but here at Break Your Budget, we cut through the crap and focus on getting the basics right. Back in January, I crossed a net worth milestone, and it actually spurred a lot of questions from you about what my broader financial goals actually were. And transparently, I had never really thought about it because I was much more focused on the arbitrary number, which is a lesson that I learned this year that those numbers really don't make a big difference. Long story short is I ended up falling down the financial independence rabbit hole, which ultimately led me to running my own FIRE numbers, creating my own FIRE calculator, and becoming really passionate about achieving financial independence on my own terms. I used to think that financial independence was just about retiring early, but what I've discovered all throughout this year and through running these numbers is that it's actually much more than that. It truly is about being empowered to make decisions about how you live your life and having the financial freedom to have the choice. So, I'm going to share 3 of the biggest lessons and mindset shifts that I've discovered since running my financial independence numbers and putting myself on a plan to become a work optional in my 40s. So, with that, let's get into it. Lesson number 1 is that knowing your numbers can help you make more empowered career and professional decisions. And I'm putting this first because I genuinely believe that it's the most important takeaway from running your financial independence numbers. Generally, in the past at least, when I thought about financial independence and retiring early, I immediately thought of extreme frugality. And that if I wanted to retire early, then I'd have to live on a strict and tight budget for the rest of my life. And honestly, that was very unappealing to me. But really, what we should be thinking about when we think of financial independence is career freedom and the choice to do what you want to do for work. But before we get into that, let's back up for a quick minute. There are 3 main types of financial independence numbers to calculate. First is traditional FI, which is just regular retirement. So for most of us, we're aiming to achieve this in our 50s or 60s. Second, and the number we're going to focus on today is COS-FI, which means you've invested enough money where you don't have to invest any more, but it will continue to compound and grow on itself. So by the time you hit retirement age, you have enough money to live on. And third is Barista-FI, meaning that you've invested enough money where you can switch to part-time work and then live off of your investments to cover the rest of your annual expenses. I do have a full breakdown video where I talk about these numbers in detail. I'll make sure it is linked up on the screen. The most important number, at least in my opinion, is COS-FI. And the reason is because it's not only the most achievable number, but it's also that very first benchmark where you can then make decisions around your career and have true autonomy over what you're choosing to do for work. When you really think about it, you go to work for 2 main reasons. First is to save and invest for the future so that you can retire someday. And second is to cover your bills in the present. So with COS-FI, once you achieve it, you've eliminated that first reason for working, meaning you've already saved and invested enough money where you will be able to retire in the future. So all you need to do is work to cover your bills and your goals in the present day. And with that in mind, you can make career decisions accordingly. So, for example, let's say that you're climbing the corporate ladder in your 20s and you're doing well and you're able to max out your retirement accounts, but you literally hate everything about your job. And as a result, you hate your life. Because remember, your career is a big part of your life, whether you want to admit it or not. You don't have to love your job, but it is important that you don't hate it. But going back to this example, let's say from maxing out your retirement accounts all throughout your 20s and running your financial independence numbers, you reach COS-FI in your early 30s, meaning that you no longer need to invest for retirement because the amount of money that you have already invested for retirement is big enough where it will grow and compound on itself to be enough for you to retire on in your 60s. This means that in your early 30s, you may then be able to choose a different career path because you no longer need to prioritize and think about saving for retirement. What this does is it frees up income availability, and then you can be more empowered empowered to make a decision around maybe pivoting to a lower stress job or a job where you have to take a pay cut or taking a lateral move to get into a different career path. Or maybe it means you can take a sabbatical for a year and then go back to work and continue on the path you were on in the past. The beauty is that you know you have enough for the future, so you really only need to focus on earning enough to cover your bills and your goals in the present. We are brainwashed to think that we need to just climb the corporate ladder in a very straight and diagonal way. And if you're not improving year over year, then your career is a failure. And I would challenge you to rewire the way you think about working as a tool to achieve freedom rather than this arbitrary ladder that we're climbing because we're told we're supposed to. Knowing these numbers is so critical because it really can empower you to make decisions that benefit your quality of life. And generally speaking, like running your financial independence numbers isn't necessarily to put together a plan to stop working entirely really early in your life. Although, if you have the income to do that, that's wonderful. I just don't think it's realistic for most of us, myself included. But what it can do is help you put yourself in a position where you get to choose what you do for work rather than feeling confined to a path that you really don't like. Lesson number 2 is that small increases in your savings rate can actually have an enormous impact on your financial independence timeline. There's a myth that financial independence isn't possible unless you're an ultra high earner. And what I don't like about this is that it creates a mindset where small wins and small changes to your finances don't matter. And honestly, this couldn't be farther from the truth. Your savings rate, so in this instance, how much money you are investing in order to achieve COSFI, is one of the most important metrics to pay attention to. And yes, obviously, the goal is to maximize your savings rate and to ideally increase it every year. But increasing it every year doesn't mean that it needs to double or triple or become super high and unachievable. Even a 1% increase in your savings rate year over year can make an enormous difference in how quickly you're able to achieve financial independence. And this is even especially true if you are younger, so in your 20s or your 30s, and you're thinking about hitting retirement in your 50s or your 60s. You've got plenty of time. But don't let the myth of time stop you from being aggressive, because the more you are able to save and invest earlier in your life, naturally, the more you're going to have as you get older and older. Anyways, let's look at a quick example to illustrate this. So let's say you're 25, you're making $70K a year, and you're contributing 9% of your salary to your retirement account. So that is about $525 a month or $6,300 per year. If you were to increase that to 10%, so a 1% increase, which translates to about $60 extra per month or close to $7,000 a year, as opposed to the $6,300 in the 9% example, the impact on your retirement is over $100,000. And that's assuming that you never contribute anymore, that your salary never changes, and that you only make that one-time 1% increase. So don't scoff at small savings, because every single dollar that you put towards your retirement counts. And the goal is to get as much invested as you possibly can as early as possible, knowing that every dollar you're putting towards it is buying back years of your life. It's a long journey, and the accumulation of these smaller decisions, so increasing your retirement contributions by 1% a year or redirecting your annual raise towards your retirement each year, can make a huge, huge, huge difference. These smaller savings wins compound in the same way that your money does, and it becomes easier and easier the more that you do it. So don't underscore an extra couple dollars here or earning cash back here that you redirect to your retirement accounts. Don't scoff at saving extra money from looking at your budget or putting money into a high yield savings account, because every dollar that you put towards your future buys back your life. And lesson number 3, which I think is the most important and why I'm going to leave you with this, is that you can actually feel financially free and financially confident long before you hit your financial independence numbers. The craziest thing about running your financial independence numbers is that it actually gives you a clear target to work towards, and it's based on your specific lifestyle preferences and desires. So rather than feeling like you're working towards an arbitrary retirement retirement goal and hoping and crossing your fingers that one day you'll have enough. When you run your financial independence numbers, you actually clearly know exactly what you're going to need. It gives you a tangible goal that you've defined. And yes, these goals can shift and adjust all the time. And I do actually recommend that you rerun your financial independence numbers annually because every year what you want is going to shift a little bit. But what is most important here is that you actually know what the numbers are. And when you know what you're working towards and how much you're going to need in the future, there are two key things that happen. First is that you can make more empowered and more confident financial decisions today because it's a lot easier to build a budget and make spending decisions and choose your financial goals when you have a clearly defined target in the future. And second, you will start feeling more financially confident because you have a true destination. Clarity ultimately breeds confidence, and even if it's going to take a little bit for you to reach those numbers, at least you know what they actually are. Because there is nothing less motivating than feeling like you're putting money into your retirement accounts and saving for the future when you actually don't even know if what you're doing is going to be enough. I think a huge blocker for a lot of us is this idea that reaching freedom and being able to retire feels completely unachievable. But that feeling really stems from a lack of clarity in the unknown, because when you really think about it, retirement is a number, it's not an age. And you may be able to reach that number well before the age that you are conditioned to think you're supposed to retire at if you make some specific and concerted lifestyle decisions earlier in your life. If you don't actually look at the numbers, then you could be working and spinning on the hamster wheel for years and years and years unnecessarily just because you think you have to work until you're 65 when maybe you really only have to work until you're 45 or you're 50. But how would you know if you don't run the numbers? This is an enormous reframe, and I swear it's going to set you free. So do not underestimate the power of running these numbers for yourself. Plus, when you know what your spending and savings targets are each year, it just makes it a lot easier to build them back into your budget, which is one of the most frequently asked questions I get is like, how do I even set these financial goals and how do I put them into my budget? Well, the first is knowing exactly how much you need every year and what your spending targets are in total and what your savings targets are in total. If you are interested in a video where I really break down into the logistics of this, let me know because I am happy to do like a tactical lesson on calculating these numbers, pulling them out annually, and then plugging them into your budget. If you take anything away from this video though, let it be to run these numbers for yourself because ultimately contextualizing your savings goals and progress within the context of your broader financial independence plan is going to give you so much more clarity and so much more motivation on your financial journey, which in hand, as we discussed, breeds more career clarity and ultimately more confidence to make decisions around your life rather than feeling like you're just a victim to the system. With that, I am going to wrap up this video, but I do have a few quick reminders for you. First being, if you do want to calculate your FIRE numbers, I obviously have a calculator for you. It's my financial independence planner, and it's always linked in the description of all of my videos. And second, I have two other financial independence videos that I recorded earlier this year. One is a walkthrough of my FIRE calculator, and one is an overview of the different types of financial independence. So I will make sure those are also both linked on the screen if you're interested in checking them out. If you have any specific questions around achieving financial independence or financial independence in general, let me know because I feel very passionately about this topic and becoming work optional and really feeling more empowered both in your professional and financial life. So I'd love to make more videos about this topic if you're interested in them. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will catch you in the next one.